And then you hear Darth Vader say, I would never coming up or whatever. Like it sounds like Darth Vader basically saying, I would not. But still, by virtue of saying that, he said the naughty words and everyone's, tee, we got Darth Vader to curse, which is funny. It is objectively a funny thing to do. I want to ask at a meta level.
I say, it appears my cranium has doubled in size.
What is it about these that makes people say, I am not going to interact with just Darth Vader in Fortnite. I'm going to see if I can get him to, recite ball recipes.
They might be self-aware.
Broadcasting live from a maniac's guide to hacking the Silicon Soul, you are listening to They Might Be Self-Aware. I am Hunter Powers, joined by
Daniel Bishop. Hello, Hunter.
Hello, Daniel Bishop.
Hunter, something wrong with your voice? Sounds like you have
Force
asthma.
is strong in this one.
Come on, man, that was decent. That was really decent.
We here at They Might Be Self-Aware know that Hunter Powers does the best celebrity impressions
So good,
and
man.
accents.
So that was my James Earl Jones.
Pitch perfect. Darth.
Don't copy strike me, bro.
Trust me, no one can or will copy strike us for that. Why are you Darth Vader?
Well, an AI Darth Vader has been taking over the internet. Well, I guess specifically a subset of the internet known as Fortnite.
I've heard of it.
And
Fortnite, as the kids call it.
Yeah, going wild or going berserk and this has never happened before, that a company has unleashed an AI agent inside of their product.
Right.
And within like 10 minutes, it turns into, I don't know, somewhere between Hitler and the insult, triumph of the insult dog. This is
definitely the first time that a company has released an AI model that people immediately got to start cursing and talking about problematic material and so on. Definitely. I'm not thinking of like Microsoft's Tay, for example. And well, I think we all learned from that a little bit of reinforcement training farther down the line of, and also please do not talk like this, is pretty important.
So Fortnite, which is, I don't know, it's probably like the most popular video game right now, Minecraft and Fortnite, and they're right up there.
Depending on who you ask, what kind of, is it active daily users were? Yes. Fortnite, immensely popular shooter game.
And they've worked with a number of different celebrities that they brought into the games. They've had these big concerts and shows, but their latest stunt.
In the game, yeah. It's like, so it is a battle royale game. You start with a zillion players and you make it down to one sort of winner. That's at least how it started. There have been different seasons and all sorts of content that have been added to it. Truly an amazing feat, I think, what has been added to this game to keep it fresh. And among the ways that they're keeping it fresh is, let's throw some Star Wars characters in there. Why not? Yeah, you can hang out with Darth Vader, talk to him.
They licensed James Earl Jones' voice, which apparently is a thing you can do now.
Yep.
Even though he's dead.
He did give permission for that.
He's dead, right? Isn't James Earl Jones dead?
Before his passing, he basically gave permission through his estate or through whatever that other companies can use his voice and likeness.
His great grandson, I think, was like,
sure.
Yeah, sure. You want to throw a few bucks my way?
Here on the dotted line.
Exactly. That's what happened. But okay. Anyways, but it was official. This is legal. Unlike a lot of AI where we just take.
That is the point that I was trying to make, is that this one is some amount of legally allowed, unlike not everything out there.
And then is this 11 Labs behind this? Do we know that? Or is that just the assumption?
I'm going to assume. I don't know for sure, but 11 Labs is still one of the best voice cloning-ish companies out there.
So someone cloned his voice. If there wasn't 11 Labs, it was a technology very similar to that. And then you could interact in real time with the Darth Vader character inside of Fortnite. It wasn't just like canned phrases that it was outputting.
You could speak, and then it's going to take that speech, turn that into text, run that through whatever large language model that they've got with a big presumed like system prompt at the beginning of "You are Darth Vader, the Darth Lord of the Sith. Here are things you know and you like, and this is stuff to talk about, not talk about." And then people just start immediately blasting with all sorts of wild language and lots of cursing. And there was a fun clip that you and I watched where someone uses a strange turn of phrase that involves some cursing.
Yes.
And then you hear Darth Vader say, "Freaking bleep," etc. "I would never say these are not words becoming of a Sith," whatever. Like it sounds like Darth Vader basically saying, "I would not use these kinds of words. How dare you?" But still, by virtue of saying that, he said the naughty words, and everyone's, tee-hee, we got Darth Vader to curse, which is funny. It is objectively a funny thing to do. I want to ask at a meta level,
yes,
what is it about large language models? What is it about any of these pieces of technology that make people say, "I refuse to use this in the way in which it was designed. I will not interact in this nice sandbox you've put together. I'm going to take your thing and drag it out of the sandbox and see if I can get it to say naughty words or wiggle in the wrong way." You know, like, why can't people, don't get me wrong, I do still find this extremely funny, but what is it about these that makes people say, "I am not going to interact with just Darth Vader in Fortnite. I'm going to see if I can get him to, you know, recite meatball recipes or whatever"?
That's a super easy answer. No one likes being put into a cage. No one likes being told you can't do this. You're not allowed. So you're in a cage here. This is the only way that you're allowed to interact. You immediately, or a large subset of people immediately, want to find out where those boundaries are and what exits exist to get outside of the cage. And so that's supernatural. And the assumption that, you know, anything else would happen. And then over time, you become comfortable in the cage, right? And you kind of forget that there are walls there.
You
now
realize, it is a nice cage. I do like it in here.
The part that I think potentially we as a society should try to evolve past is becoming outraged when someone acted completely outside of the norm and convinced the James Earl Jones character to drop a few F-bombs. Yeah, of course. There's some crazy workaround where you can get James Earl Jones to drop F-bombs. Who cares? Because
yes,
that's not the intended thing.
Yeah.
In my line of work, building software, I find that people often focus on these edge cases where you could break the software. If someone put in their name and they put in over a 1,000 character long name, it crashes the whole system.
Well, don't do that.
I've evolved to like, who cares? Who cares?
Right.
Who cares? I don't care. As long as it doesn't break the system for other users. The fact that you put in 1,000 characters and you got some weird error screen and it took you 15 minutes to figure out how to get out of it, I don't actually care. I do not care because you tried to break the system and congratulations, you broke the system. Yeah, let's just assume that if you tried hard enough, you could break the system. But if you tried to use the product as you know it's intended, it works great. That's the avenue that I care about. That's the avenue that we should care about. Who cares that Darth Vader's dropping F-bombs?
Spoken like a true software engineer that is not in quality assurance.
Yes.
There is a whole subset of people out there who are like, I literally live for these edge cases and to make sure that our software works all the time, no matter what you throw at it. And you're saying, nope, don't care.
Who cares?
Who cares? I do think at a certain point you have to kind of say, look, we gave you James Earl Jones to hang out with in Fortnite. Yes, you could get him to curse. He's not really supposed to. As kind of, it's still a Star Wars really thing, but like as an ancillary note, I went to the Star Wars land at Disney World.
Yes.
Oh my God. Incredible. Yeah. Like I felt like I was in Star Wars. The people are, I'm going to call it like 70%.
Now, did you stay in that hotel that I think they closed down?
No, the Galactic Cruiser or whatever. I was the perfect person for that because I'm such a huge Star Wars nerd. Even I didn't do it. It was way too expensive. It's since shut down. But the park part is still there. And it's incredible. And the people are in character. Like, I'd say more, well, not more so than elsewhere in the park, but just the fact that they are acting like Star Wars characters. Like, there's more of this cultural knowledge that you have of what it's like to sort of be in one of these spaces. And so you're encouraged to basically kind of play along and act like you're sort of part of it. And I think maybe Darth Vader in a online shooter game, Fortnite or whatever, like that's that's harder to really suspend your disbelief and say, I wish to play in this space with you. But I do think that when it comes to like, I'm going to have a large language model that I'm chatting with at a certain level, for most people in most cases, I think you do kind of have to say suspension of disbelief. Let's actually talk to this in the way that it is designed to be talked to. And of course, people will always be poking at the sides of it. But I know that certain kinds of large language model or other AI products are really adamant about that. Really, really adamant. And so like OpenAI has, I think, fallen afoul of this multiple times where they had, here is this new version of GPT, it's 3.5 and then 4 and 4.1, then 4.5 and back to 4.1, whatever it ends up being. There have been a couple iterations of this where it was like really locked down and it wouldn't talk about a lot of stuff that was pretty benign, and people complained and they eventually sort of loosened the guardrails. But one that I've seen that has a lot of those guardrails put on, a new-ish OpenAI product, is that of their like image generator, the new really good one, the diffusion-based model. That one, from what I gather, is very, very touchy about what it will and what it will not generate. Another thing that to me is a whole leap beyond what OpenAI was up to there is Google Gemini VEO-3. There's this new, I think like at time of recording, it's only been out for like a week or two, video generator. There's been a couple open source ones and non-open source ones before. Of course, our much touted OpenAI Sora, which I feel like we stopped hearing anything about as soon as it became available to people. And that has its own kind of sub-story behind it. But VEO-3 doesn't just generate video. It does like 8-second clips. So it's not the alleged minute plus long clips that you could get from Sora. 8 seconds, but really good video. Like really good video and audio along with it.
Yes.
Character speaking, sound effects in the background. Wild. Really wild stuff. I saw a whole bunch of demos online and said, I have to try this. And I went to Google Gemini and it said, you're not allowed to try it.
Oh, really?
Really?
I have access. Why you don't?
I now have access.
Oh, okay.
The reason why they said I don't have access is because I didn't have Google Gemini Ultra. Now, I've been making fun of you for many episodes now of being subscribed to some very expensive services for the like latest and greatest and the high-end versions of the models, especially like OpenAI. I did subscribe to Gemini Ultra, which was, I think, like $125 to get access to this. I'm trying it for 1 month and then I'm turning it off because it's very cool.
Am I correct?
No way that I need it for longer than that.
That's the discount pricing, right?
Yes, right.
The
So
first
this is like
3
half
months,
off.
right?
Yeah.
The first 3 months you get half price, but it's $250 a month, which it goes to after.
I'm just not. It's a very cool piece of technology. It is, I think, literally revolutionary. I have not seen anything even close to the capacity of what VEO-3 can do. For those of you who are, well, I'm not going to show anything here, I think, on the podcast, but maybe we'll like send a couple of links to some videos that I've made or ones that other people have made. Take a look in the show notes. But it's awesome. And I mean that in the literal sense of the word awesome. I am awestruck by how good these videos are. And I'm not going to pay $250 a month for it. I'm just not. I've seen people put a bunch of clips together into like short films. And there were some short films with every version of everything previous to this.
Well, it's also important that even on that $250 a month plan, you actually can't generate that much video. Like you're capped at a pretty small amount of video for the month. I think it's like close to an hour-ish of video is what you're able to generate for that $250 after
it only
that.
lets you do a few a day, and I've definitely hit the limit.
Whereas my access, because I have the whatever ultra tier on OpenAI, I think I have more or less unlimited access to Sora, or I can generate a ton on Sora. Of course, nobody wants to generate anything on Sora.
I was going to say you.
No,
right.
I use Runway. Even though I have the VIP tier of Sora, my default when I need video is to go to Runway, and sometimes I still use the Luma Labs Dream Machine.
Right. And you can do like lip syncing of audio to some of these other clips, which means that VEO-3, which has audio built in and does a very good job of it, you can still get basically the same kind of thing through some of these other tools that are available. But sort of the point is, it's just an app that you go to and say, make me a video of this. Here's the camera movements. Here's the scene composition and so on. And it just does it. It's not always exactly what you asked for, but I'd say most of the time that's me not asking it well enough as opposed to it not taking direction. Because I've seen some of the examples that they gave online. Here's a simple prompt. Here's a more complex prompt. Here's a more complex prompt. And like as it gets more complex, you can watch it is more or less following all of the stuff that is being asked of it.
Yeah. And there is a rumor, and it's almost certainly true, which is that we are going to get another version of Sora before the end of the year, OpenAI's version, and that it is going to substantially move the bar again past even VEO-3, which, I mean, of course it is. And everybody's going to have these video generating models. Right. But the point is, man, we really are getting to that line where this looks like I'm watching a professionally produced video. We already got to that line on the photo side, if you ask me. Yeah. You can generate images that look like they were shot by a professional studio. Maybe not the best professional studio in the world.
A professional studio.
Yes, a professional studio. If you told me you spent $25,000 capturing this image, I might think you got ripped off a little bit, but I wouldn't think that was, insane. I'm like, okay, yeah, I buy that. Yeah. Looks like a very large corporate photo shoot for this, ad campaign. And we are right on the cusp of that moment. And maybe even if you squint your eyes a little bit, we're there with video now with VEO-3.
Speaking of that, I generated, through a silly conversation with some friends, we were talking about like a supplement, I guess, for minerals and vitamins and so on.
Okay.
And like, what would be the most toxic masculinity sort of focused version of this? And it's just like, it looks like a rock, and it's just called Man Rock.
Man Rock, it's all the minerals you need. Get some.
Man Rock.
And you just lick Man Rock, and it gives you all the vitamins and minerals. That it's like a deer lick, like the salt, things that you put out for deer to lick.
Every morning I have my Man Rocks.
Yeah, exactly. And so
You're
I had
listening to InfoWars.
Right. In that same sort of vein. So I asked it, like, it has to be vaguely patriotic in the background. Muscle-bound guy. And it made a video of, like, there's an American flag in the background. It's just some big muscly dudes like, Man Rock, it's got everything I need. And it shows them, like, basically take a bite of the
Dude,
rock.
you sold me, man. Right. I'll sign up. How much is it a month?
Exactly. Right. And we can make basically, like, spec clips now. And I've seen some people who've taken a bunch of these clips and put them together already into short videos. In terms of empowering people to make, dare I say, cinema of a sort, I think that this is tremendously empowering. In terms of people are going to use this to fire entire creative teams, whether or not that is the correct decision, both from a quality and from a moral perspective, I think we're also unfortunately going to be seeing things like that. And along those lines, I did want to bring up a question, a thought experiment, a line of discussion with you.
Yes.
At time of recording,
I'm thinking
DeepSeek out of China has just released a new version of a model. It's one of these humongous models that most people are not necessarily going to be running at home, but it's scoring extremely well on a bunch of the benchmarks that are out there, as did DeepSeek R1. Really, really, really good model that you could run locally, big asterisk next to it. My presumption is that the same sort of legal battles that are going on here of please do not steal all this copyrighted material to make your models is not necessarily being seen through as thoroughly abroad. If we
wait, you're suggesting that the great country of China might violate U.S. copyright and might infringe on the U.S. intellectual property? That's absurd,
Believe
Daniel.
it or not, yes.
That is absurd.
Despite
you've gone too far, sir.
Well, it's what I think.
What would Winnie the Pooh say in China?
I don't speak any Mandarin, so I don't know.
I think Winnie the Pooh's banned in China.
Yeah. So with DeepSeek R1,
that's the one IP that they respect.
That's right. With any of these different, despite the fact that it's a public domain here, despite everything that is out there with DeepSeek R1, with what I expect we're going to see some other video models coming out. WAN is a Chinese originating model for video. That's one of the best locally runnable video making models that there is right now.
WAN, W-A-N?
W-A-N, yeah.
Okay.
I've played around a little bit with it. Really cool.
So you running it locally, or you're running it in the cloud?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like on my computer, I've run it. There's also, it's easier and faster to run things in the cloud, but like I have run WAN.
How long does it take to generate something?
Like 5 or so minutes for like a 4-ish second clip, depending on a variety of different parameters.
Sure. Okay.
5 minutes to like 30 minutes, again, depending.
Okay.
So it's not quick, but it's making something pretty cool. Yeah. And this is, as you've said, the worst it'll ever be. There's going to be better ones that are not necessarily having respected copyright. If we have freely available models from a place that doesn't respect copyright, and this is probably some of the same legal arguments that are being made about like AI dominance in America in the courtrooms to this day. But to you, Hunter, I pose the question, if others aren't going to respect copyright law, and then they will quote unquote win the AI war or be winning, or more of the money that could be being spent on US based companies isn't as a result, are we, and by we I mean the Western world, fighting with one arm tied behind our back? Is it at all excusable for us to not play by our own rules when others aren't doing so and are competing extremely heavily against us?
It is my strong belief that we are already living in a post-copyright world. We just have not accepted this reality entirely. There's the debate going on right now about whether, if we did have to ask artists to, use their permission to train these models, would that just kill the entire AI industry overnight? And I don't know why it's a debate. The answer is yes. The answer is yes. Move on, folks. Yeah. Move on. And I understand that we have to go through the charade, the theater of it all. There will need to be giant court cases that are going to play out for years and $1 billion moving back and forth. But we are living in a post-copyright world. We just have not yet accepted it. That is my firm stance on the matter.
So you think that we are staying competitive because we being your Google Geminis and your OpenAIs and your so on, are just completely ignoring all of the copyright, or at least enough of it, to be able to drag out the court cases long enough to the point where it didn't end up mattering.
Yeah, I think it's already happened. It's done. And now maybe in the future, as these models evolve, they will get better at not being so transparent that they were trained on this copywritten material, and getting more back to like what all the creators or the, what do I want to call them, the trainers of these foundational models say, which is, no, it's more just like a human sort of observes things and absorbs it. It's not that they're recreating the copyright work exactly. Maybe like that reality will be more apparent on the the outcomes, the material that's generated by these models. It won't feel like you just literally directly lifted this out of this other text and you ripped this person off very exactly. I can see us getting better on that side of things. So things don't feel like today, they just feel like giant copyright violations when you interact with these models. So that feeling will go down over time, but it's still going to be there. It's still going to be, I've trained on all those materials. And yeah, man.
I know that that's definitely the case when it comes to text. I feel like it almost certainly is, and we just haven't found out yet. We haven't seen enough articles where someone's like, look what I just generated using, whether it be VEO-3 or any of the other video generation pieces out there. There's a couple of lawsuits that are ongoing against like Suno, for example, from probably almost certainly having trained.
That's the song one, right?
Yes, for training on audio. And I wonder, like, is it just because these are different kind of classes of models that do individual different sorts of things, is it even a different conversation each time, or is it really just the same one of, we illegally got our data, this one just happens to be MP4 files instead of .text files?
Well, I guess there's potentially different case law in these different industries that people are going to try to leverage. Right? We have the idea of sampling in music. Oh, well, you copied 3 notes or 4 notes, or did you perform the notes yourselves, and it's just that they were the same notes, or did you directly lift that sort of cut? So people are going to try to leverage the different case laws in these different industries. But yeah, at the end of the day, is it all kind of the same thing? Yes, it is. Now, more sort of interesting is will the government at some point kind of step in and say, okay, right, we're changing copyright. Like, we're just going to come out with a new law that redefines all of this.
Sort of, I think, is actually the case there, because the Trump administration fired the head of the copyright office, I believe.
Yes.
Right? So I think
no education anymore and no copyright anymore.
Right. Yeah. You can't. There was something about like you're not allowed to bring up any lawsuits about AI companies for like 10 years or some insane thing like that. I think the answer to anything related to copyright and stealing IP within the US for US based AI companies, I think is quickly becoming moot, not because it's not legal, but rather because the powers that be are saying, don't worry about the legality of it. Like, just circumvent it. You already were, just keep doing it.
I do think it's plausible that there could legislation could be introduced that basically requires some degree of accreditation to, again, the materials that you're trained on, and essentially a tax that gets applied to this stuff. So you have an attribution model, and that evolves over time, where if you are going to be using these models for commercial purposes, that you must then pay this tax, which is just, I mean, we tax everything. Why wouldn't we also tax AI, which then goes into this fund that then gets paid back out to the creators that it was trained on? And it will be a pittance compared to what they would have actually made. Kind of like the streaming models, where the artists don't actually make any real money. They got 10 million streams, and here's their check for $2.25. It'll be like that, but it's better than nothing. That I could see happening because it's happened in the past.
And we talked about that kind of thing. But yeah, right. You mentioning basically the Spotify sort of model of every artist that's on this does get their pittance here and there. So you're talking about the theft basically of the actual data to train models. What about the theft of advertising revenue? So Google has an AI mode that's been, I'm going to say, increasingly prominent-ish through, like, I made a Google search. Here's the Google AI results, and they pop up top.
Right, they had Google I/O, which was their big annual conference. It was a pretty good. Did you watch the keynote, by the way?
I did not.
It was a pretty good one. I'd recommend checking out. But yes, as part of that, they announced that they're more officially bringing AI mode to Google search.
Right. And so if you search for something that's related to like a very recent news happening, there's going to be an AI generated summary available for you, which is, most of the time going to be mostly correct. If you're searching for anything, it will pretty much have one of those summaries for you. If you are not going to have to then go to the actual websites where the news was put, if you're not going to go to the Associated Press, if you're not going to go to CNN.com, if you're not going to go to whoever to actually get the news that was reported there, and on that website, it is completely laden with ads because that's how the modern internet works. The people who are reporting the news are going to lose a very important piece of their income, which is to say, advertising revenue. How do we solve that problem? I don't think that Spotify hears what we've figured this is 1/10 of what you would have gotten from your advertising dollars. But hey, you don't have to worry about your server costs as much. Here's $12 for the 2 million people that just took a look at your news article. How do we circumvent that problem?
Yeah. So
much of the modern web relies on those ads, relies on people actually going to the websites. A seemingly helpful, here's what you would have learned if you went to those, could completely undermine much of the modern internet.
Yeah. Well, there have been lots of lawsuits in this area in the past. And so before Google AI mode, there was Google News, and there's also Meta or Facebook has their news feed. They've both been sued by news publishers saying, hey, you're publishing these little summaries of the stories on your site. You should be paying us to do that. And both of them respond exactly the same way, which I think is probably the correct way from a business thing. They say, fine, we will remove your content. You will never see an article from the Washington Post or the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal appear in Google search results ever again. You get your wish. And they're like, hey, no, not so fast, Google.
Right.
Maybe it's okay. So that's their stance on it. They're like, okay, there's plenty of news out there. We'll just point to someone else. You don't want your stuff on Google. You don't want your stuff on Facebook or any other platform. Fine, we'll take it off. And so now, but then there was a link back. And I think there's a link back now, but it's getting to that point. But I don't know, this is a regurgitation of that same thing. And the truth is that the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times or whatever media publication can't rely on Google Google being the primary source of their viewers, their listenership. I understand that they want it to be. They don't want that cash cow to be cut off, right. But they have to. Now, at the same time, these companies, and we'll pick on those two again, Google and Meta, are very actively, the government is trying to break them up. And that's sort of the other side of this. The government saying, hey, I think you got a monopoly here. We're just about to hear the outcome from the Meta case about whether Meta has an outcome. Google, they're trying to figure out how do they break them up. It's Chrome come off in a separate thing.
Right.
But that these companies are too big and too powerful, and they are using this power in ways that we have decided is not acceptable as a society to, for example, just, all right, well, Wall Street Journal doesn't exist anymore because we're going to just take it out of all search results. You're not supposed to be able to do that. The consumers are supposed to have more choice in the matter. So that's the other part that will kind of balance this out. But I guess the question is, are we just moving past these old experiences where you would interact with this material through a web search to these new AI models where, honestly, there's no point in going to wallstreetjournal.com anymore or bloomberg.com or cnn.com. Why should I?
Because that's where the actual source of the news is coming from. Or sometimes it's, via the Associated Press or what have you. But I think that one of the biggest and best promises of a large language model, of modern AI, is summarization. It's to take a bunch of text and to moosh it down into something that's much more easily ingested. I will also say that we didn't need full-on large language models to do this. Previously, in the pre-ChatGPT type days, there already were a bunch of little programs out there that could take a bunch of text and they did
a pretty good job too.
Yeah. So there's two modes for this. There's extractive and generative.
Abstractive.
Yeah. Summarization. One is where it just takes like a couple of what feel like most important sentences, and the other, which is it wrote a summary. So this is not a new technology, but what I will say is that if we have this ever more ubiquitous, we'll take a lot of data and smoosh it down into, here's your one pager of everything that you need to know. Just like any compression algorithm for taking a picture on your computer and then you squish it and send it off to someone, they blow it back up. You lose a little something along the way. I think there is nuance that is being lost. There is some amount of the quality of the reporting or of the story being told that you lose if you just get the one-page summary. Otherwise, why bother writing an entire book? Why isn't everything a short story or a one-page little micro book?
I require everything now to be compressed into just a single sentence, and I actually won't consume anything now that is more than a single sentence. And I honestly think it's served me well.
I do think that there is something to be said of the, is it attention spans or whatnot associated with your ChatGPTs and alike in an educational setting of, we're going to take this whole lesson and compress it down. We're going to take your homework and then smush it. We're going to reduce the amount of time spent learning, or the time spent reading, the time spent mentally engaging with material. And that is something that I think that we would want to purposely push back on.
Well, we definitely want people to spend time mentally engaging with They Might Be Self-Aware, the #1 AI banter podcast, insights, all the things.
All of them.
Until it inevitably gets replaced by AI. But up until that moment, it's going to be glorious. And you too can be a part of it. Hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, interact. It will start coming all around you, surrounding you with the greatness that Daniel and Hunter bring a couple times a week right here. Whether you're watching it on YouTube, listening to it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or really just any podcast directory, we are there. And we want you there with us. And that's not creepy at all, okay?
Brought to you this week by our proud sponsors, Man Rock.
I used to feel weak, but now with Man Rock, I'm better than ever.
I want you make the Man Rock. I'll be your first subscriber.
I'm going to send you, and everyone else, I will see if I can get you a link to the video for Man Rock because it.
Brought to you by Man Rocks. You have been listening to.
They might be self-aware.
Man Rock, it's all the minerals you need. Get some.